I find myself in most of the demos or what I work with. This is it. I'm a tag, so it's like
perfect size.
All you have to do is fit a tag, and I'm happy. I'm just like fit a number 8, fit what I normally work on. But obviously, as great as this is, I just want you to keep in mind it has its limits, right?
Yeah.
If you're making a card and you want to use like Glorious Bouquet, that's really not going to happen here. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
It's not going to give you any place to work with it. So it really depends on what kind of stamps you normally use.
Yeah, or if you want to do like off the edge of stamping.
Here you're going to get that whole off the edge, but you're out of space.
Yeah.
You have no platform to work on. So it's totally up to you. So same thing, we've got clear rubber, so I'm going to work with a rubber stamp. So I'm going to put that in, and just going to take it, we have that same base that's going to be magnetic. Now, when you're working on the resist, what you need to understand is that it's still going to resist. So if you stamped in an ink that you applied the background, it's going to resist that ink, okay? Keep that in mind. Okay. So if you sprayed that big puddle in the middle of resist, you're like, oh, I'm going to stamp something there. No, you will, but then you're just going to wipe it right off after you're done, right? So here I'm just going to go in and say, okay, I'll put this little guy here, and now I'm going to kind of position him around that resist. See what I mean? So I can see where my resist is. So I'll put him here. I'll take my little text. I'll put that there. I'm just going to close it to transfer this. And then whenever I stamp with words, I always like to flip it and just check, right? I'll use this grid that's here, right? Just to kind of see if my text is going to run parallel to my grid lines, right? Because sometimes this is printed, but it doesn't really match up with that. It's like, oh, it's close enough. All right.
I really like that you have the lines etched, because I find that so much more
they're actually molded, so
okay,
you can't
molded.
Get gunk in there.
Yeah. But I like
important.
that because it's not like screen printed like some of the other ones, and it's rubbing off then, and you're losing the grids.
So the only thing you can't use on this is mineral spirits or nail polishing, but you can use everything else. You can use any kind of stamp cleaner, any kind of permanent stamp cleaners, and when I'm working on this, you can see how durable it is. So I'm inking my stamp with purpose, and it's not caving in, which is good.
So if you go
and then we're just going to pick this up, flip it over, press down.
You can
just give it
actually
pressure. You don't need to be a CPR stamper.
And when it comes in, she'll get it to
if you
you.
were, you're still, I need to make sure. That's good. You know who you are. I know.
Behind you.
So you can get it from
that's going to be it. But here, there's these kind of raised edges here that's really going to kind of help you with that. But the nice thing is I can look at this and say, well, it's working. But if you could say, oh, I missed an area, and I have the ability to ink and just go right back and do that again. All right. So these guys, because I get so many emails about these magnets are strong.
Yeah, they are.
If you even have them look at each other, they're going to come together. And when they do, they're going to snap, they're going to pinch, and they're going to shut. Okay. I know there's people that do washi tape and they do all these tricks. Okay. My trick: keep them in opposite corners of the ring. Always move your magnets away from each other. It's really simple. I mean, I've never put tape or anything on it. It's just like they're fighters. They stay in opposite corners of the ring at all times, because once they get together, there's a battle. And usually you're in the middle of it. Ouch. I feel your pain. It's a horrible sensation. Yeah. So this, you would use any kind of stamp cleaner. I'm not going to clean it till the end, and my stamp cleaner of choice would be hand sanitizer. That is what I use.
Hand sanitizer?
Hand sanitizer.
For your platform?
For anything I would clean in my craft space.
Even your rubber stamps? It doesn't dry them out?
No, hand sanitizer. Because it is a gel, it stays wet longer, because when you put rubbing alcohol, it's your first wipe, the alcohol is gone. You gotta do it again. So you put a little squirt of hand sanitizer, wipe it off, and it's gone. Yes.
That's really good to know. Thank you.
But this is how I clean my stamps. Like, that's it. This is clean in my book. Cleaner does not meet the stamp, ever. Not even sanitizer. Like, wipe it off, that is clean. Because this is permanent. So when I wet this is not going to re-wet. It's permanent. So that's all I do. And wipe that off. Take these off, put them away. But now we've got that little guy, and that little guy can still be collage, splattered, washi tape, a million things.
If you were to use the page plastics, you would clean
just with water. Just with water. Yep.
Because it's a water.
Correct. Water with water and solvent we just wipe off. Absolutely. All right.
Hola, Mireya.
So far, so good. Now we'll talk a little bit of alcohol. We'll talk about what's new there. Look at these. Those are good, huh? Yeah. Yeah, let's ink this real quick. Because, you know, when it comes to working with embossing powders, you know, embossing powders are plastics. So wherever this is, nothing's going over the top of it. No ink for that matter. But I think this area around is going to be pretty cool to add some colors. So let's just go in with some sprays. We're just going to put this on. And I don't really care where I spray over the top of this. This is still going to give me just some great little movement. There we go. Just know where you're pointing it. You've never done that, for real? No one's ever sprayed themselves? You're just like in your, you know, you're in your movement. Now here's the cool thing about this. This is why I do like this gun especially. So at home I do have an embossing gun and I have a heat tool. Okay, embossing gun is that cylindrical tool that most people emboss with. It embosses very quickly. This one, heat tool, much slower time. I love this because when I go and I go over my ink or embossing, I don't have to worry about this stuff remelting right away. Because remember, we have embossing powder on it now. So if you only have an embossing gun and you're trying to dry ink and you go in with a towel and you try to dab it off, that powder is probably, it's going to go with you. Yeah, so that is one of the benefits of having this, is that I have the ability to dry the ink, but now I can get, because the ink would have never dried on there, even if I would have dried it with a heat tool. If you touch it, it's water, it would have come off the plastic. So, but I love just that little edge of color. It makes for something really cool that you could, again, put into a journal, go over with paint. You can use dilution paint pen right over the top of that. Pretty cool. Again, anything that's too dark, I just want to take that away because I kind of like that soft background. Wipe that up. Wipe off the back of that. And you're good to go. I'm going to show you, before I get into alcohol ink, I'm going to show you one other thing with oxide.
It's gorgeous.
Stand it, yeah. Like, because
you're like so excited over it.
But I mean, for doing mixed media for so long, when you get to like see a new texture, or you just wonder like have that, that's cool. Yeah. It seems so silly. It's like, well, Tim, it's a bumpy tag. I'm like, yeah, but it's a cool bumpy tag. Like, where do you get bumps like that?
On oranges, or you make them if you're in a reason.
See, it doesn't matter how set up I am. No, that's yupo. So yes, but no. No, it's glossy, but not for what I'm trying to achieve.
That's okay.
One question, Tim. I mean, did they have rings when you showed them? Yeah.
No, I painted those.
So they
the
come with a ring, but you can
brushes-
paint them.
Blending brushes are like this.
They
So it
come
has
with
that
a
silver ring.
Okay.
It's all raised. Washi tape, acrylic paint, then you know what it is.
Okay.
Yeah. That only
Victor
took
says
me
you're
like
just
3
super.
weeks to figure that one out. It only took 3 weeks of me posing, and then I put the dot on the top because I thought, oh, I got this. I do that with my other ones. Or is the top? So I ended up taking them all out anyway, and I thought, okay.
Good idea.
See, you think I have it all figured out. It goes through a lot of, oh, let's figure this out. No. Well, I did eventually, but definitely not right out of the gate. And I thought, oh, there's a reason. All right. So for this technique, I'm going to share what to do with oxide. But we're going to use glossy cardstock, and that's important to understand the kind of paper for this particular technique, okay? Because we have specialty stamping, which is a coated paper. It's a matte coat. There's yupo, you saw. This is synthetic. This is a plastic, okay? You think it's paper, but it's really plastic. It's awesome because it works. Oh, nice. So yupo is very cool, but it's really great for alcohol inks and other backgrounds. But we've got this great synthetic paper. I love yupo. If you love stencils and you have die cuts, this is your friend, because you can take any die cut you own and make a stencil from it. Because you can take any thin die.
Good idea.
Because if you've ever tried to cut plastic sheets with a thin die, it does not cut through it. It pushes it, and you take it out. This thinks it's paper, okay? It will take any kind of ink, but it makes killer stencils, right? And then you use it indefinitely because you get it wet, and then it just wipes right off, right? So anything, you use it again and again. But for this, it is important that we have alcohol ink. Now, alcohol ink cardstock, we also call it glossy, right? It is a coated paper. It's a clay-coated paper. Glossy on one side, matte on the other. Can you do this technique with photo paper? I've had luck with some photo papers, but a lot of photo papers are so emulsion based that they get very sticky when I do my background. So I really need to preface that.
Hola, Jordi.
Showing this, people go, oh, I win, it just didn't work, it didn't work. I'm like, but did you use alcohol in cardstock? No? I'm like, strike one. Yeah, like you're not even out. So what we're going to do is do exactly how I've done other backgrounds, which is I'm just going to take my colors of ink and I'll apply them to my surface and I'll make a background color. And you could do one color at a time. Sometimes when people do backgrounds, they really don't like to put everything down at once. Sometimes they like to put a few colors down and layer it. Whatever your strategy is, it totally works. Okay? I just like to get some colors down there and then figure it out later. All right, I'm going to go in, we're going to add some water. Glossy side down. It is important with the glossy paper that you work on the glossy side of the paper. I've taught this technique many times. There's a lot of mine didn't work. And it's like, okay. You got your glossy paper, check. Then you work on the glossy side. Strike two. And we're just going to dry that. Same rules apply. We're still going to dry our layers on it. But glossy, because it is a clay-coated paper, and I say that because it's alcohol ink cardstock, it is not emulsion-based like photo paper, so it never gets gummy, never gets sticky. That color is actually baked into the clay. That's why the paper was so significant. Now I'm going to go back in, I'm going to do another layer. And you'll see that on this one, the color goes on pretty intense, but then as it dries, as it oxidizes, you'll see it start to fade. It starts to get really light.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
They will be amazed with the technique. I know it.
Cool. This technique is awesome, right? This
Yep.
technique has that. What just happened? Yeah. All right. I'm going to go in and add some more colors. Add some dark red, a little bit of pink. Let's go in with some greens. Don't be afraid of your colors. But think of your workspace. Whatever workspace you work on, think of that as a palette. If you have a large area, you can pretty much compartmentalize where you want to put some of your products,
it's yupo
right?
paper.
You can put stuff over here, and we'll use let's use some seedless preserves here. There we go. All right. There we go. Spray. And same thing. I'm just going to make a print. Oh, that's good. That's good. All right, great. You're only as good as your next layer. I told you that. Sometimes things go through a lot of ugly. You're like, I don't like it. I don't like it. Okay, keep going.
Keep going.
Keep going.
Yep.
As long as you dry in between.
You're good to
If you
go.
just kept going on the first one, well, you're going to end up with a lot ugly no matter how many times you go in. It just won't happen. Just going to add a little bit of blue there. I think I want a splash of yellow, so we'll go with some preserves. And just kind of get some of that. Okay, I'm happy. Okay, we're going to dry this. Now, this in
that's
itself.
pretty.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
You don't have to be
interrupt.
sorry. No, you're not interrupting. I love that. You need to say thank you. I want to feel your praise.
There you go.
Because you're saying what I'm thinking. I'm like,
It's-
that's
yeah.
really good looking.
I
Yeah.
have no filter.
I have no filter. Just say it.
Okay.
It's the best. We're all in the same creative world. I love that. It's very cool. All right, so at this point, just to review what just happened, okay? We went from a paper that was glossy, okay? So this is glossy cardstock, okay? Very important to understand. Not yupo. Glossy paper. Glossy
Alberto.
cardstock.
Oh, it's not yupo?
Not yupo, no.
It's glossy. I was
Right.
wrong.
So in
Glossy.
Ranger's world, it's called alcohol ink cardstock. And the reason we called it that is because when we said glossy paper, we sold glossy cardstock. Everyone's like, oh, I have something glossy. But not all glossies are created equal. Some are laminated, some are photo-based. So alcohol ink cardstock, you know, is a clay-based paper, right? So we went from something very shiny to something very dull, very almost chalky-like, right? Now the oxides do sit on this totally different because unlike regular paper, it has that clay coating. So when I wipe over this with my finger, I'm getting some of that oxide on it. See? That kind of chalky, weird finish, which brought me to my, I wonder if I could take it off. So the first time I did this technique, I licked it. I did. I had stuff on my hands. I was going to lick my fingers, but these were worse than that. So I just wanted to see what would happen. It's non-toxic, but I want to tell you my process. Because people go, how do you figure this out? I just thought, I wonder if, because as I was touching it, I'm like, this oxide's coming off. I wonder, what if I took it off? Well, I licked it, and the oxide came off, but then it oxidized again because it got wet. There you go.
Yeah.
So,
Now you're going to make
so then I was-
flavored ink.
so then I was like,
Yeah, flavored ink.
No,
That's
they've
a
done
really
scented inks back in the day when I started with Ranger. Anyone that was old school Ranger remembers they had these scented inks in a tin. Horrible. Yeah. If you were using like one color, that was good because it had like baby powder, licorice, watermelon, root beer. So each one individually you might enjoy until you make a card. You have 7 colors and you mix baby powder and black licorice with a little watermelon. No good. Yeah. So that's not what this stamper in mind. Yeah. So those quickly right now. So here's what I'm going to share with you. We're going to use
Microglaze.
There we go. Microglaze. Okay? Because distress microglaze is what makes this permanent. You put distress microglaze over any distress and it will make it permanent. So something that will normally react with water, if I put microglaze on, it now makes it totally permanent. But microglaze also has this really interesting effect to kind of make this surface not only permanent, but it's going to keep it from reoxidizing because we are sealing it in a sense. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay? Because if I put it on regular cardstock, right? So if I put microglaze on, I can use my finger. If I put it right over this, it doesn't change the oxidation. It still looks exactly the same, but this is waterproof. But because this is glossy, it's going to do something crazy cool. I like to use a tool for this.
Is that paper new?
No, the alcohol ink cardstock is not new.
And that's what you're using right now?
Yes.
Okay, I had a question. Thank you.
Doesn't matter. Just thought I'd
Can
do some extra.
microglaze be used on a stamp to make stamped images permanent?
Yes.
Yes.
But you would put it over the stamped image, not on the actual stamp.
But you would put it over the stamped image
Because
and
if you
not
put it on the
stamp.
stamp, now you basically made the stamp permanent.
Oh.
Which means it won't take ink.
Okay.
So then it becomes more of an embellishment. So just think
That
about
might not
that.
be pretty. Because
But
it's
if that
stamped.
happens, it's a great, every question is for a great purpose, because if you ever got microglaze on a tool, a stamp or a stencil, and you want it off, rubbing alcohol will take it off.
Oh.
Because I've done that, right? I have wanted to stamp with microglaze, but then I want to clean my stamp, and it's waterproof, so water doesn't work, and baby wipe doesn't work, but rubbing alcohol will take it right off.
Okay.
All right. See?
Sorry.
Hand sanitizer would as well. Absolutely. So here, this is sized for this. Okay. All right. You're welcome. That's why, 'cause it's like, it's such a weird squatty jar. Why? I'm like, because it needs to fit that. Okay. And it could also fit the brush. But here's what's cool. Are we ready? I'm going to take this and I'm going to go and I'm going to apply this. And it's going to start to remove
That's
the
pretty.
oxidized layer
We did it again.
and start revealing my
dying.
colors. And when it reveals my colors, I'm going to be able to take a cloth and just wipe this off. And now you have this look of alcohol ink or encaustic wax.
Yeah, it's
How
just
pretty
great.
is that?
That's ridiculous.
It's beautiful.
That like just sends chills down my back right now. I'm like, what just happened?
For real?
All those layers that you couldn't see in the finished thing, right? Because when you looked, it just looked like a big oxidized mess. Every layer, every splash had purpose, right? Every little bit in the blue became a layer. Every little bit of pink or green became a layer, right?
Yep.
It's very cool. Now, not only can you wipe off the whole thing like I just did, but I could have oxidized a background. I could have laid a stencil down, and I could have just microglazed through my stencil, and then my stenciled image would be vibrant, and my background would still be oxidized, right?
Yep.
So the point to understand is wherever this is done. Now, if this gets wet again, the water is just going to beat up on the top, right? Because this made it waterproof, all right? Where it isn't, I missed a little spot, it just reoxidized. See that little corner? Oxidized. We'll take care of
Can
that.
you use a journaling pad?
Bye-bye. Absolutely. You can use anything. There's nothing on this. It seems like it would be waxy. You can use a ballpoint pen, a Tombow marker. You can use anything. Because remember, the paper itself is still clay-based. So it's not a transparency. So you can take any kind of marker and write over that. In fact, glossy is kind of that paper that I think because we assume, and I need to stop calling it glossy because it's alcohol ink cardstock. Because glossy, you just think, oh, you use any glossy paper. Usually glossy paper and like a marker, right? If you've ever taken, this is just a distress marker, right? We take a water-based ink. Let's just take different papers. We're going to take watercolor paper, alcohol ink cardstock, you're welcome, mixed media, and craft, okay? We're just going to take a distress marker. This is a water-based marker.
Isn't it?
We know
Yep.
that we
Thank you very
watercolor,
much.
We do all that.
Sorry, reaching through.
Okay. So we just put that marker on craft, mixed media heavy stock, watercolor, and alcohol ink cardstock. If I go in with a brush, just take a water brush. Okay. If I go on craft, it's going to move that color. If I go on mixed media, it's going to move that color. If I go on watercolor, it's going to move that color. If I go on alcohol ink cardstock, it does not move your color. Your color stays. Your color will not dissolve. This, it will dissolve it down. This, it's in the paper. Okay? So that's what you need to understand about papers. This is actually the most porous of all the papers, which is why that technique works so well. Because every layer that you put in heat, you basically baked it into the paper. And the only thing that can't get baked in is that oxidized layer, right? It just sits on the top. And all we had to do was take off the oxidized. And
It seems it should be the other way, that it's not.
I know.
Yeah, that it wouldn't even stick there.
Yeah, you would think that on glossy, as soon as you touch it, everything's gonna, all the color's gonna come off. No. So that's one of the great things about alcohol ink cardstock, is that it's this really cool, very resilient paper that does something cool. Now we will get to alcohol ink. It's a good segue, actually.